We always love talking about the great sport of freestyle skiing on this show, but I actually am a bit surprised that through all the freestyle skiers we have had over the years, we've covered all the disciplines except for a couple. We've had aerial skis, we've had mogul skis on ski cross, all those ones, but we haven't had the real freestyle skiing. We haven't had halfpipe, we haven't had slopestyle, we haven't had big air, and we are finally going to tick that off the bucket list here today on Off the Podium, because joining us today we have a national junior champion in slopestyle and halfpipe. We have a junior world championship top 10 finisher in the big air. We have a World Cup top 20 finisher multiple times, competing in the Youth Olympics in 2020 and the Beijing 2022 Olympics, where she finished 26 in slopestyle. And it is an absolute pleasure to welcome to the program the one, the only Abi Harrigan. First of all, Abi, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on Off the Podium today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Did I tick all the boxes there? Have I missed anything else? Did you win like a school fair or something like that you maybe want to add into the intro? I don't know, like a colouring in competition as like a child maybe? I don't know. Anything there?
No, I wasn't really good at many things.
Oh, well, you're great at skiing, and that's why we're here to talk to you about this today, because I'm actually very intrigued. You and I have been talking a lot for quite some time to try and obviously get this there, and very intrigued to sort of hear your journey, because I was working at Channel 7 during the Olympics and loved kind of like seeing your background and then obviously the situation that happened to you just before Beijing. So to learn a little bit about that today, I'm very excited. And skiing, Abi, 3 years old, I believe you were when you started. So, I mean, was this a case of you basically born with skis on your feet?
Pretty much. Was close to.
Where does that come from? So is it just basically you live near Jindabyne or you grow up in Jindabyne, so it's kind of like that's the natural thing? People who grow up in Jindabyne kind of just ski?
Yeah, most of my friends started around the same age, so.
Well, it's so baffling to think that coming from most of Australia, where we're not really near snow, are we? So a lot of us are playing different sports. Was this also something family members did? Parents, siblings, were they also skiing as well?
Yeah, I have two brothers. They're both skiers, started around the same age, and my parents were the first in their families to move down here and start skiing.
When it comes to the skiing aspect, of course, with all the multiple disciplines that exist of skiing, what was it about freestyle skiing that really took your fancy over, say, alpine or cross country?
I kind of grew up when like moguls was going huge in Australia. It still is really. So I kind of started that way and then found the more fun stuff, I guess.
I like the way you describe that, because you were born in the year 2002, if I'm not mistaken, which obviously is a very famous year for Australian winter sports, when Mr. Bradbury and Miss Camplin won our first ever gold medal. So it's almost like a natural ability. You're born in 2002, you must get into winter sports on that way.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Did you ever sort of tackle alpine or cross country, or was it just sort of the moguls and the freestyles that you said get into the more fun stuff?
I did like inter-schools, so competed in everything there and then just picked the fun ones when I got older.
I have to ask, with the moguls aspect, I realise you were 4 years old in 2006. That's probably not a memory, but Dale Begg-Smith, was there any sort of posters on the wall, or kind of was he just the legend around Jindabyne in the 2000s, kind of after his gold medal in Turin?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit after that, but his name definitely got thrown around a lot in Jindabyne.
I always have an excuse to bring him up here, Abi.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's a god on this show, so we just kind of always have to bring that up. But it's obviously the disciplines that you're involved in, the big air, the slope style, the half pipe. These are still fairly recent additions to an Olympics. When you were going sort of through the motions in the freestyle disciplines, were you thinking an Olympics? Was this something that as a young girl you were wanting that to achieve that, or did that sort of come along as you kept progressing?
It kind of came along as I kept progressing. Like, I always wanted to ski and just ski forever. Like, I think that's kind of how it came about. I didn't want to stay home for a summer, so that's the way to do it.
The opposite, really, of most Australians, right? So many people just, it's a bit chilly, we're gonna chase that. I love that kind of attitude, because I guess if you grow up in a place like Jindabyne, it's not exactly Bondi or Queensland or something like that. You're sort of used to that chilly. As I said to you off air, I'm Tasmanian, Abby. Not quite as cold, probably, with snow like that way in Jindabyne, but I'm definitely more of a a cold fan. Did you play other sports outside of skiing? Were you sort of quite active amongst the other sporting circles in school growing up?
Yeah, I did a fair bit of sport growing up. There's a bit slim choice in gender line with sports when I was growing up, but yeah.
What are the choices? What are the other choices?
I did soccer and then it kind of went from soccer to rugby, but rugby wasn't really my cup of tea.
Was there any like prospect of soccer? Was that something that you kind of
Uh,
enjoyed and could have been a Matildas instead?
I don't think so.
Not quite
Did it
going.
till I was about 8.
And then just it was purely on the skiing things. What was
Yeah.
the scene like going into events like a half pipe slopestyle big air? Because I can't imagine as say a 10-year-old they're shoving you down a massive big air at that age. So I guess it's kind of like a progression. But at that period when you were that age, was there much of a scene around those disciplines?
There wasn't a huge scene. There was like Russ Henshaw was coming up, so there was a bit of a scene with him getting into it, the like Perisher Parks, but there'd always be like a sidekick that's a lot smaller that I would choose.
Because I can imagine we've had a lot of ski jumpers on the show and they've talked a lot about sort of that progression of you're not shoving down a 120-meter hill straight away. You're obviously going from the smaller ramps and you build your way up. Is that a similar thing in, say, particularly the big air, that there are kind of like those smaller aspects that you build your way up to the literal big air?
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely some smaller, safer jumps, and then you work your way up until the big ones.
When it comes to, I guess, comparing the three disciplines, I mean, they've got their similarities, but also I can imagine they're very different.
Mm.
Is it a capability of when you're training that you sort of do focus on one for a certain season or event over the other, or can you kind of correlate your training that it works well for all three disciplines?
So big air and slope style are very like close together. Like for the 2020 Olympics, they actually qualified together. So if you qualified for slope style, you qualified for big air. But half pipe's quite different. Like there's not too many people that do all three because it's like quite different. You have to put a lot of time into half pipe, but it's still skiing, I guess.
It's got that aspect to it, but that artistic element, which obviously draws a lot of fans to watching it. I mean, we saw sort of the growth of snowboarding, kind of when that came into the Olympics in '98, then kind of how that's developed into more and more events, and we've obviously seen that gradually now in the last decade or so with freestyle skiing. Do you have a preference of the three if you had to sort of choose?
Yeah, probably slope style.
Slope style. Is there
Yeah.
a particular reason? Is it because you sort of got more time to sort of do a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's more time. It's a bit like big airs. It's a bit like can't think of the word.
You're one and done, basically, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's a bit like straight up, straight to the point kind of thing. Where slope style, you can put a bit of style into it.
it also seems more strategic, I can imagine, in a way, because like obviously big air, one and done. Half pipe even has also got a bit of an element to it where you're only really getting a certain amount of jumps, aren't you, sort of as you're going down. Whereas slope style, there's not really, I guess, a speed element as such in terms of that you can take your time a little bit more, if that's correct.
Yeah, like you can choose your own lines and stuff. You still you've got a little bit of time to think. If you mess one thing up, you can still kind of fix it down the road. But yeah.
Is it a case too? I know we've sort of spoken with certain events where, say, snowboarding and skiing will share it. Ski cross and snowboard cross, for example, and we've had your very good friend Josie Baff on the show and sort of talking a little bit about that. But when it comes to sharing the sort of courses with snowboarders in these courses, is it a case of you always like to get on first ahead of the snowboarders, or you like it afterwards because maybe they lay down the snow a little bit better? I mean, is kind of there a preference on that side of things?
Usually it doesn't really make a difference, but if the snow conditions are a bit softer, I'd prefer to get on before them because they kind of ruin it a bit.
Pesky snowboarders, right? They're
Yeah.
always sort of talking about that. Just on that, like mentioned Josie, we had her on just before Beijing, and since then she's gone on to win World Championship
Yeah.
silver and doing very, very well. Sort of, did she ever try and tempt you to go over across to snowboard? Did you ever try and tempt her to go across onto the skis or anything like that growing up?
She was always a skier for as long as I can remember, like racing. Tried to get her off a few jumps a couple of times.
But that must be a fun experience when you grow up with someone like that, and then you obviously go to a youth Olympics together, and then go to a full Olympics together. I mean, was that kind of the dream? Did you talk about that much, growing up, and when those opportunities came, it just added to those experiences?
Yeah, it was really cool. Like we competed in inter schools together, and we didn't really kind of realize we were on the same paths until Youth Olympics. And
Nice.
then, this is pretty cool.
Kind of works out very well. I obviously get to the youth Olympics because I love learning about any athlete's experience when it comes to those. But as I sort of mentioned at the top, national junior champion when you were 15 years old in slopestyle and halfpipe, then sort of progressed through junior world championships. You were sixth in 2018 in the big air, 11th in slopestyle, 14th at halfpipe. When it came to sort of getting to that level, when you're competing in these big events, you said you just wanted to ski kind of forever. But is it at those points do you sort of have like a competitive nature that comes out of you, that you're going to these events, you're obviously winning junior championships, that you're just going there, okay, well, this is a bit different now. This isn't just skiing forever. This is like, well, I can go out there, do the very best I can and push towards doing top tens, podiums and further on.
Yeah, I think at the start, I didn't think there was too much competitiveness because there were so little girls in slopestyle skiing then. But then when I got to compete in junior worlds, I realized I was pretty competitive because there were a couple more girls in it. And I was like, I actually want to do really well here.
Have you seen since then when you were doing that, say what, like 6 or so years ago to now? Like, I mean, how is that growth going with girls in those sort of disciplines in freestyle skiing, particularly in Australia?
It's definitely getting a lot better. I used to compete by myself all the time, just me. We're definitely getting up to like 5 or 6 girls, but I think we still need so many more.
How do you think that can happen? Do you think it's just sort of more exposure, recruiting people from the other disciplines of skiing, kind of saying like, hey, you bloody aerialists, stop doing aerials, slopestyle, big air, half pipe, it's where it's at. Come on.
Less scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just more exposure for the sport. Like it's still a pretty new sport. Not too many people know about it yet. So
Every time we get aerialists on this show, I always like to say, like, stop stealing our gymnasts. Like, I'm trying to always say to our gymnasts who come on the show, like, go steal aerial skis, like, get some of your own back. So I'm saying there that even in freestyle skiing, you need to steal the aerialist, right? Like, just go to Jeff Henneke, just, look at that, say, shut up, David Morris, bugger off. Like, I need this skier. Like, we want them. Like, that's where it's at, surely.
yeah, I wish.
You get Laura, you get Danielle, they've done all right.
I'll give it a go next time.
Yeah, go get Dale out of retirement, like he's on his island. He can come into that sort of level, I'm sure. Dale would be all right at the big air or the slopestyle. I think he'd do okay.
I'm sure they would.
Did you ever meet Dale? I have to ask that question.
No, I don't think I did.
Damn.
No.
All right, I'll tell you what, when we get him on the show, that's the dream. We'll make sure that you're around with that to do that.
Yeah.
Youth Olympics, though, did that become a goal pretty quickly when you were sort of competing at places like the Junior World Championships and these other competitions?
Yeah, it did. One of my friends, Cameron Liddell, he went to the Youth Olympics before my ones. And when he went, I was like, I think I really want to go to these next ones.
Which
kind of made it a plan.
It's always seemingly that whenever we ask about it, that it's almost like a very good preparation for a full Olympics, right? Because obviously outside of the competition side of things, which we'll touch on, but you're at a multi-sport event, you're representing your country, you're in a village, you're meeting competitors from different sports that you would never associate with on the World Cup and other stages like that. So how helpful was the 2020 Youth Olympics in preparation for the full Olympics 2 years later?
It was really good. Like I've never been to something like the Youth Olympics. Like it was so crazy. That venue and village and was so cool. It's not really the best to compare it to China just because of COVID and everything, but I'm sure it would be just as cool if there was no restrictions and stuff.
That was right before COVID, wasn't it? Right. So that was at the beginning of 2020, like literally those golden days when we're like, COVID, what's that? So you kind of were able to get a perfect little window there, weren't you, to have that before kind of the shit hit the fan around the world?
Yeah. Just after the Youth Olympics, we went over to Switzerland, and then a couple of weeks later, just sent home.
Everything went down that way. When it, like, I'll touch on this when it gets to Beijing, but we always love hearing about those experiences around, pin sharing and kind of bumping shoulders with other athletes and things like that. Did you get sort of involved in that level, or was that something that maybe was more prevalent a couple of years later at the full Olympics?
Definitely some pin sharing at the Youth Olympics. So much fun.
How does it compare, like, to the Beijing? Because I love the stories when we sort of hear that, the Olympics will sort of, the IOC will create things like apps, like, do a certain amount of things and you find a hidden pin or something like that. Or, there's always, pins from a certain country that everybody's sought after. Like, is that more because it's a Youth Olympics, it's sort of a bit more engaging with the sort of the age group, or does that sort of take a different level when it comes to Beijing?
Yeah, I think they were pretty similar with like the pin sharing and the apps. You had to do like certain things to find certain pins and stuff, which was cool. But I found it a bit harder in Beijing to get like access to the apps and stuff.
Was that COVID related, or was it just kind of?
I think so, yeah.
Do you keep everything outside of the pins? Like, I'm that type of person I would keep everything from a letter to here's my lanyard to here's like like I would just hoard everything. I'm that much of an Olympic fan that if I ever made an Olympics, that's what I would do. But are you that type of person, Abby? That, like, where you sort of, even both the youth and the sort of that, you just kept literally everything?
Yeah, I've pretty much got everything.
Nice. Is it scrapbooking, like folders, a box, like mum and dad keep them? Like, what do you sort of do with it?
It's in a box on like a hanging thing in my room.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Do you have, I don't know if I've ever asked this question before, but like a favorite piece of anything Olympic related, be it a pin, a uniform, like anything that through those experiences you're just like, this is my most prized Olympic possession?
I got a pin that's just straight up like the colored Olympic rings, and it was from Thomas Bach, the Olympic.
Like personally given to you by Thomas.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I need to hear this story. Like, how did this come about?
So I was in the Beijing Olympic Village, and we were walking to go up to the one closer to the ski resort, and some person just came and was like, you have to come over here. We're doing like some signing thing with Thomas Bach, and we don't have an athlete. We need one now.
Wow.
So I got pushed into this thing, and it was with Thomas, and I got to meet him and trade some pins.
What do you say? Like, you just shove his like, here you go. This is the president of the IOC. Off you go, Abby. Over to you.
Yeah, it was pretty, like, I was not sure what was happening at the time.
Tell me, at least, you obviously knew who he was, right? Like, that wasn't...
Yeah.
Right, okay. It wasn't like an awkward, like, who? Like, that sort of thing. Does he sound like Count Dracula in person as much as he does on TV? And when they introduce you, is it true that legally they have to say Thomas Bach, Olympic champion fencing?
I don't know about that one.
Every time his name gets announced, I swear they have to say Olympic champion fencing. Yeah. Pay attention at the next Olympics. You listen when they announce him. It's like a thing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. What was he, was he nice, I'm guessing? Like, kind of everything along those lines?
Super nice. There was obviously a lot of people around him at the time, and pretty hectic, but yeah, it was really nice.
Did you give him a pin in return? Like, did you give him an Aussie pin? Or?
I tried to, but he was like, no, I don't trade pins.
Oh, he just gives them away.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's kind of like a Pokemon Go style app where you've got to collect the pins, that's like the golden Mewtwo, right? Like, that's like the absolute perfect one to get. Wow. What an incredible story. There you go.
Yeah, it was really weird, but very cool.
Hey, some people came home with Olympic gold medals. You came home with a personalised pin from Thomas Bach, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Eileen Gu, couple of medals, please. Did she get a medal, like a pin from Thomas Bach? Don't know about that. You obviously, I mean, just on Eileen Gu, I mean, she obviously did great things in Beijing, did great things at the 2020 Olympics, and a real, I guess, poster athlete for the sport. You talk about sort of expanding, getting more people in it, particularly girls. Does it take sometimes like somebody like that to really kind of expose it? Because she's obviously got a huge profile, in China and the US and around the world and everything along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. I think she's doing amazing things to get girls into skiing, especially in China, it seems. Like, she's doing a lot of things with some young Chinese girls, which seems really good. And yeah, she has such a huge following. She could reach out to anyone pretty much.
What's that like when you've got someone like that and you're competing against them? Like, is it kind of
It's
just
pretty crazy.
like, somebody with all those connections, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you just, is there, I don't know if there's things like sledging and mind games going on in these events, but I mean, do you kind of like always look to someone like that as like, oh, like if I can just beat you in one run, like I can put that on my resume that I beat Eileen Gu today.
Yeah. It would be pretty nice. But yeah, it's amazing. Like such a nice person as well. So it's hard to be like, oh, I wish I could beat you when everyone's so nice.
Is it a community like that? We see that with a lot of these winter sports that where the fields maybe aren't as deep as some of the other ones, it does seem very close. So sort of when you're on the circuit, be it at an Olympics or just a World Cup, that you're all sort of very close off the snow.
Yeah, we're all pretty close. Like it's a very good group of girls. Like everyone's super supportive of everyone. It's such a good time when everyone's around.
That's what we like to hear. Just
Yeah.
on the Youth Olympics, so 10th in the half pipe, 12th in the slope style, 15th in the big air. One thing that I love, Abby, when I research this interview and look at the results, your results are just so varied across the disciplines. As in, it's not like, oh, you're clearly so much better at one than the other. Like it's kind of like there always seems to be a thing there. But do you set yourself goals going into a Youth Olympics and say, okay, I want to make the finals of each event. I want a medal. I want to finish top 10. Like what were your goals and how did you leave Switzerland feeling?
Yeah, I as every athlete does definitely set goals. For Youth Olympics, I can only really remember mine for slopestyle, and that was to make finals. And I was pretty stoked when I did make finals, but then bummed out in the finals, but it happens.
You achieved that first goal though, of course, so
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
I mean, I can imagine though too, like when you tick that off the list, you're like, okay, up in the finals, and you kind of obviously reassess that there. We've talked a little bit about sort of just the different training between each, but that mental preparation, do you sort of find yourself doing anything in particular from, okay, I've achieved this goal, now let's switch focus to this, and kind of how do you prepare yourself in the mind going into an event like that?
kind of think as all three of them, I kind of set a goal, like a loose goal for them as a group, because it's kind of a bit hectic going from one to the other to the next. So,
Just kind of balancing it out there. Do you work with sort of like sports psychologists and things like that though too on the mental aspects of the sport?
I have a little bit, but I haven't really found someone that I really connect with as much. So not, we're getting there.
That's what I'm saying. People are listening. Then maybe contact
Yeah.
Abby, and then
Yeah.
potentially they can put that along the way there. What was it like having Josie though walk away with gold medal, Australia's first ever youth Winter Olympic gold medal? There you go. There's Bestie
Yeah.
out there with a nice piece of jewelry at the end of the day. Do you hang out with her a little bit more then to get some free stuff?
Yeah, it was amazing watching Josie compete there. Like she had just gotten a good result like a couple of weeks before, and everyone was like, "This is gonna happen. It's gonna be sick."
She told a great story when she was on the show about getting a medal back to Australia. So, kind of the stories along those lines. Obviously, between Youth Olympics and then Beijing, you did pretty well, sort of, in the lead up, sort of on the World Cup stage. You're getting several top 20 finishes, and even months before Beijing, finishing 13th and 15th in slopestyle. Obviously, before we touch on what happened, unfortunately, before Beijing, what was sort of your mindset at that point, that close to an Olympics? Kind of you're in very good form there. So I guess you were feeling quite strong and tracking well heading into what was going to be your first Olympics.
Yeah, I was feeling pretty good with all my results, pretty happy with how I was skiing and everything. It's just, it was a bit hectic. They changed the qualifying, the qualifying years. It's usually 2 years before your results count. But because of COVID, they made it 3 years, and I didn't compete in that third year. So it made it a little bit harder, but we got there in the end with that last competition.
So that basically means that at that point, rather than say feeling comfortable at a certain point because you would have maybe been on a certain level to go there, you've essentially got to get better results in a few more events to kind of, I guess, catch up, I suppose, to the other girls.
Yeah, just had to like keep my results pretty consistent. Couldn't like drop down a couple have a fall in a run. So it was a little bit of pressure there, but yeah.
What was that feeling like then when you realized that you had achieved that you had ticked those boxes and that you were going?
Yeah, I was so stoked, like super happy, over the moon. But for the last qualifying event, it was in France, and I had to get, I think it was a top 15 I had to get, or I had to, no, sorry, I had to get above one girl. So this one girl that was ranked 30th, I had to beat her in that competition. And it's so hard because you're such good friends with these people, and then she fell both her runs, and it's like I don't know if I should be excited or happy.
Oh,
Oh, it's
wow.
sad for her, so it's hard. But then she ended up going to the Olympics as well, so
Silver
it all worked
lining.
out.
Silver lining. Because I always love talking to athletes in sports where you sometimes kind of have to cheer that they fuck up, right? Like
Yeah,
it's you don't want them to, and obviously you don't want them to get hurt. But like
yeah,
part of you has to be like, oh, if you crashed right now, I wouldn't be too sad.
yeah, yeah. It's horrible, but it's how it goes in the sport.
Yeah, and but like that's where going back to that camaraderie between you all though, where you kind of almost need that in a sport like that, don't you? Whereas
Yeah,
there are sports out there where sledging and things like that are part and parcel of it, but there's sports where maybe you don't necessarily want them to crash, right? So
mm,
it's kind of it's a weird comparison what I'm about to say here, Abby, but it's kind of like how say like our great emergency service workers out there kind of have to have a bit of a dark humor about them because they face such tragedy every day to kind of
yeah,
keep them sane in a way. So like this is kind of that way of you guys were like, oh well, we're all besties and everything, but if you crash, thanks very much for that, Eileen Goo.
yeah,
So
exactly.
things along those lines. It's a very unique question that I'll ask here before we get to the injury because I think yours takes a little bit of weight considering what you went through to just line up for one event at the Olympics. But did you feel like you were an Olympian that moment you qualified, or did that come from that moment when you did hit the slopes in the slope style to obviously push through the pain to say that right now I am an Olympian because I've competed at the Olympics?
Yeah, not gonna lie, I still don't really feel like it's a thing yet because of the injury and everything. So I'm hoping that we make it to the next Olympics and it can be more official, I guess.
Is that also then when you get the tattoo, Abby? Have you gotten the rings tattoo yet? Or
No, but it could be the
yes.
next ones.
I mean, the injury, take us through that because you're on a hill in Italy and you essentially get taken out by another skier.
Yeah.
Now, how does that happen? And I mean, it's probably a very obvious question I'm going to ask, but like what's going in the mind at that point? Like, oh, this
Yeah.
obviously isn't good.
Yeah, so yeah, I was just standing next to a rail about to film my coach Leon do like a trick, and this girl just comes in, takes me out, and yeah, straight away I was like, oh no, like this is it. I have
Shit.
to go home now.
Wow. And
Yeah.
was this a fellow competitor? Was it just somebody just having a bit of a joy ski? Like who was this other person?
So it was a young girl who is a competitor. She's a bit younger, so she only just started competing in World Cups like this last year gone. So I do know her, but yeah.
I mean, of all the ways to get an injury like that, like if you were landing a trick and the leg goes, or in training yourself, something like that, but to just have such like a random event like that happen, and this was what 2-3 weeks away from Beijing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the day that I got like officially announced that I was going. So it was
Wow,
about 10 days out.
10 days out. That's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. And the moment a doctor assesses your injury, are they like, we have to wait and see? Or was it kind of at an extent where they're kind of straight away like, well, okay, it's bad, but we can do something about this to get you to Beijing?
So it was all up in the air. So I got an X-ray so I went in Switzerland, got an X-ray, and then it was like, it kind of looks broken, but it kind of doesn't.
Wow.
So they were like,
How does that work?
Apparently, they think it could have been previously broken, so it's built up a bit of like callus. So it didn't really look broken to them. But then I got another X-ray and then sent it to the Australian doctors, and they were like, "Yeah, there's a pretty clear fracture through it." So they were like, "We can try. You can definitely come to Beijing, and we'll see how it goes."
And is it one of those ones where you have to have those conversations with your coach and doctors about the longevity and risk? Because obviously it's kind of that, you've got a ticket to the Olympics. You know that you've got it. So you just have to be ready enough that you can compete versus, well, if you do that, you could fuck this up even more and then there's your entire career gone. Like I can imagine those conversations are being had at that point.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversations about it. And pretty much straight away, they were like, you can't do much more damage, unless you completely snap your leg, which is very unlikely. So they're like, you can't do too much more damage. So I was like, might as well go for it.
I guess they're kind of good words to hear then, like,
Yeah.
it's sort of not too much damage. I mean, I read, so a heat molded plate mixed with painkillers. Can you explain to us what on earth a heat molded plate is?
Yeah, so it was pretty much a piece of plastic, and then they heat it up, I think, in hot water and mold it to where the fracture was. And then I just slip that in my boot, and it's like a casing around my boot.
Wow. Geez.
Yeah.
And painkiller, like, and obviously there's a certain amount they can only give you.
Yeah.
I mean, did they work? Were they killing the pain or did they only sort of work to a level where you're like, okay, well, this isn't that great?
They definitely worked, especially for the first like 2 training days. They worked quite well. And then I got a cortisone shot as well. And then I had a bit of a fall and it kind of weared off a bit.
Wow. Which, I mean, how were you? This is a weird question, but how were you at dealing with pain beforehand? I mean, you're obviously a freestyle skier, so I mean, pain's part of the business, right? But like, I mean, was this something that, was the most difficult thing you had to overcome, or was it a case of, I've had worse, like, this isn't that bad?
Well, touch wood, I haven't had that many, like that's my first broken bone, first kind of serious injury I had had. So not sure how I deal with pain,
Well, I think maybe
really, but I think
you're
it's all
learning.
right. Yeah.
Obviously not too bad. How, like, were you seeing a doctor like every day? Was this kind of something that, the Australian Olympic team's doctor was just kind of assessing you basically every day to see where it was at before competition?
Yeah, I've seen doctor, physio every day, like icing it every day, doing as much as I could to make it good.
And in terms of, obviously you mentioned you heard it a little bit more in training, but how limited, like, how difficult is it to be that limited in training? Because obviously you train so much and then you get to this point where you're doing everything you can to just compete in one of your three events. But like, I mean, again, back to my favorite question on the mental side of things, how hard is that level to overcome?
Yeah, I definitely had to like think about what I was doing a whole lot more, like how I was landing, how everything was going. Um, but I just had to like do 2 or 3 runs in the day, like 2 or 3 runs closer to the competition in the day and just call it so it didn't get any worse. So it was pretty scary.
And obviously, so you pull out of the big air first because that was going to be your first event. And I can imagine of all the three, because that's got more of a heavier landing. I could imagine that. Was that one ever a realistic possibility, do you think? Or was that one kind of always going to be a no-no based on the injury?
I think it was pretty much as soon as I found out we were like probably not gonna happen, just because it was like straight, it was the first event as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have too much time to play around with my boot, my skis and all that kind of stuff.
But the slope style, obviously, as you said, your favorite. You at least got to go that. At what point did you get the green light? Like, how close was it to the event where it was kind of like, yep, Abby, you're good. You can do this.
Yeah, I kind of got the green light from the start of training. Like as I was saying, the first training day was actually going really well. Like I was doing basic tricks, but I was still doing some tricks and stuff. And then I had a bit of a fall, and it kind of changed from there. Had to dull it down a bit. But like they pretty much said, you can go. And then I was kind of basing my decision of how I was feeling right up until the comp day, really.
And so when you woke up that day, do you just have to take a moment and just be like, well, yeah, am I really feeling this, or is it a case of, well, maybe not, but I'm gonna push through this. I'm gonna do this because I'm gonna become an Olympian today.
Yeah, there was definitely some doubt. Like I was talking to parents, brothers, and being like, I don't really know what to do. And then I was like, well, I'm here. I might as well give it the best shot. Did a few training runs and then slopestyle got called off because of the weather. So I had to wait another day.
It's almost like what's in
Had
the cards. It was
more
helping you
time.
out there, though, right?
Yeah,
The
it did
Beijing
help.
gods wanted you to compete.
Yeah, exactly. So I had some more time to get it better. And then the next comp day rolls around and it's like, well, might as well give it a shot. Like I can ski.
So that is the best attitude I've ever had to yeah, what have I got today? All right, breakfast, sure, Olympics. Yeah, might as well give it a shot. Why not? It's there. I'm here. Why not?
Yeah, that's kind of how it went, really.
Next time I wake up thinking like, do I really want to go to work today? I don't want to call and say, might as well give it a shot. I'm
Yeah.
going to just think of you. You're my motivation now, right there.
I
Which
would do like one run and be like, no, this is it. Like, I can't do the next one. And then I'd do another one and I'd be like, I guess I can.
But I guess it's kind of one of those things. I mean, you're obviously so young, so it's sort of you've got such a long career, hopefully, ahead of you. But it is also that level where any athlete doesn't know how many Olympics they've got in it. You know, it could maybe be your only shot at an Olympics, or you could go to another 10. So, I mean, I think at least now it's been a year.
Yeah.
You kind of reflect back on that choice now and go, well, it was the right one. Because, again, I'm always an Olympian. They can never take that away from me.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever know what decision is the right decision, but I'm happy with what I did. Like, I got to ski in the Olympics and it was so much fun.
Which I guess goals go out the window. I mean, sure, maybe a month before you're going, I want to get to the finals, I want to do this. But at that point, are you just wanting to get to the bottom of the hill unscathed and finish your runs and just get through it?
Yeah, there was a point in like the last training session. I was like, I'm just gonna have as much fun as I can while I'm here, as much fun as I can on a broken leg while I'm here. So
And
that was my
did you have
goal.
fun? Did you have
Yeah, I
fun?
had so much fun. Like as soon as I was like, there's no pressure, there's nothing on, I was like, just have so much fun.
But that's such a unique experience that like you just don't generally hear people at the Olympics say that I'm
Mm.
going to have fun, because it is such a pressure cooker of an environment in Olympic Games that no matter how many more Olympics you go to, Abby, you can always say, well, my first experience, it was a blast. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's so incredible. Which, when you finished that third run, I mean, what was the emotion like? What was that feeling like that you'd done it?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was obviously pretty sore, but I was pretty like happy with what I could have done. There's not much more I could have done to make it any better.
Which I can imagine too. I mean, looking at the overall results, of course, obviously, Caroline doesn't start, so technically you're not last. But I mean, you do, at least on your first and second run, not get the lowest scores. So, I mean, just saying, on a broken leg,
Yeah.
crashes or not, I'm not taking them into account, Abby, but you still beat people on a broken leg. So, in
I
your
guess
face,
so.
Megan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Trying to pump that up a little bit. What was your parents' attitudes like in all of this? You said you were talking to them, you're talking to your brothers. Like, are they more concerned, or are they sort of more encouraging you? Like, you're here, Abby, like, give it a crack, go on.
My mum was stressing out a lot. I think she was just trying to say anything to make me happy and whatever. And Dad was like, just kind of rolling with the shots kind of thing.
Such a dad, right? Like, just
Yeah.
sort of going. Were they able to go with you, or were they watching back in Australia?
No, they were back home.
Right. Which obviously, adds a little bit of hardness to it, obviously, in a normal Olympics, without COVID restrictions and things like that. So when that is done, half pipe, was that then, again, were you looking at it realistically, or was it kind of, I've done this now, this isn't really a huge prospect and I'm okay if I don't do it?
Yeah, I was kind of like, half pipe was kind of just like thrown in extra kind of thing anyways, like
Hmm.
even if I was completely healthy. So after slopestyle, I went through the half pipe once and was like, this isn't gonna happen.
Not going to happen. Not going to
Yeah.
happen. I've always loved asking this question to our Australian athletes post Beijing because of the success that obviously Australia had last year in Beijing, and just that vibe. Because a Winter Olympics obviously a little bit more unique. You're a lot more spread out in terms of villages and things like that than say our summer athletes are. But can you describe that mood that was going through the team during those Olympics? I mean, Jakar obviously as part of the freestyle team won a gold. So, I mean, was there just an added vibe and energy going amongst the Australian team during those games?
Yeah, the vibes were definitely high. Like everyone was just so stoked to be there. Like everyone was just having so much fun, like enjoying the competition, doing their best kind of thing. And it was super cool.
I guess the positive of having your events spread out and kind of that will I, won't I compete is I guess you kind of have an excuse that you are sticking around and you can maybe watch events, whereas a lot of people are obviously getting shipped home after their events. So was that a bit of a
Yeah.
bonus? And did you get to go out and watch? Did you get to go watch like Josie, for example, or anything like that?
Yeah, I watched a couple of Josie's like qualifying runs, but her um was it the
The mix of the
semi-finals?
semi, right? Yep.
Um I was competing just before that, so I was like, I'm gonna go ice my leg kind of thing, do the right thing.
Yep.
But definitely watched it on the TV and stuff. And then went and watched the moguls. Yeah, went and watched moguls, and then watched everything on the TV pretty much.
Which did you also then get to experience either the opening or the closing ceremonies at all?
I didn't. We decided it was best not to walk on my leg
Probably a
through
good
those
idea.
ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is that something that because I know it obviously depends on sports and sort of competition schedules and that, but just sort of based off your experience you had last year looking towards future Olympics, is that something that if possible, I know Milan's obviously going to be a different one with different venues spread out across that region, but that you would like to experience that in a future Olympics?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to experience an opening or closing ceremony. It will be pretty cool.
I mean, you still can't top Thomas Bach giving you a bloody like pin.
Yeah.
He's not doing that. No. He doesn't stop like, welcome to the games, Abby, have a pin. Like that's kind of not what he's doing. When you got home, was it straight into rehab, kind of fixing the leg and sort of like, where are we at right now? Obviously, more than 12 months removed. How is the leg and sort of how are things since Beijing on the competition front?
Yeah, I got home pretty much like 2 weeks after, had surgery on my leg. And then it was actually a pretty quick recovery. It was like 3 months kind
Wow.
of thing, which is good. Screws are still in there, but it's really good. Like, don't really feel it at all, which is great.
Kind of like a Terminator leg now that you've got some like bionic parts in there. Does it, when you sort of got that, I guess, full capability back of the leg, does it cross your mind at all? Like your first time you land a trick, or I mean, obviously you didn't break it sort of in a landing, but I mean, just certain things along those lines of when you first hit the snow after, say, the surgery and you're back to that level?
I was definitely very aware of my leg, especially like because my boot sits right where it's broken because it's called like a ski boot fracture kind of thing. It's right where the ski boot is. So I was a bit cautious of it. But then like after a couple weeks getting a bit more comfortable, couldn't notice it at all really.
And then I'm guessing now with all of that in mind, you've recovered now and you're obviously still going strong out there. Milan Cortina, I'm guessing that you've had that taste now, Abby. You realize
Yeah.
what it's like. You've got the Olympic blood in you now. Is that kind of just pushing forwards towards Milan Cortina?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the goals at the moment.
Beating Eileen. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. You can't let Josie do all the
Yeah,
medals.
exactly. I got to do some of it.
I know, right? Like, I mean, in all fairness, Youth Olympic gold, pff, World Championship silver, pff, come on, you get the gold.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what she's missing, isn't she?
Yeah.
Just I'm just putting it out there as well. But again, it's sort of Is there an age? I mean, it's probably a difficult question to ask given that it's such a newish sport at the Olympics, and we've got people competing who were still there less than 10 years ago for the debut of these events. But is there almost like a peak age for a slopestyle skier or a big air skier? Like, is it sort of, you've got many years to come before you even hit your peak?
Yeah, I think it's still kind of being figured out what it is, but it's pretty young. I'd say it's probably between like 20 to 24, 25.
You're in that golden period.
Yeah.
You got, I mean, so you're peaking in Milan. I'm saying,
yeah.
2026. I'm putting this out there to any freestyle skier from Australia for 2026. We've said this with our moguls guest before, but like obviously 2006, Dale Begg-Smith, as we mentioned, in Italy, Golden Games. All right, Alyssa Camplin, bronze in freestyle skiing in Italy. It's a year ending with 6, beginning with a 2 in Italy for Australia. I'm just saying right now, it's been a good omen for Australia at the Winter Olympics. Italy, number 2, number 6. You've got all that luck on your side right now, Abby. It's going to come together for you.
It's going to be the ones.
Exactly. All right. It's going to be sweeping it. Like Eileen, like what did she win? 2 gold and a silver, wasn't it? Pfft, come on, you're going to win 3 gold. 3 gold.
Yeah. Easy.
That's what I'm saying right now. Outside of skiing, sort of like what are you up to? Kind of what's life like for Abby now? Has it changed since you've become an Olympian?
Not entirely. I'm working a lot, trying to save up for the next Europe trip. Hitting the airbag a bit at the moment, which has been pretty fun.
That's a sort of new facility, isn't it? Sort of the airbag facility. I mean, what's that been like in terms of has that helped yourself? Like you maybe don't have to travel as far now to kind of just have like a basic training facility like that?
Yeah, it's so good. It's like one of the best facilities there is in the world. So it's amazing having it in my backyard pretty much. But definitely see it paying off in my skiing this last year. So it'll be fun to see what happens.
And in terms of, you were talking a little bit off air sort of about where you're at right now in terms of the upcoming, I guess, winter and here in the Southern Hemisphere. You were touching a little bit on New Zealand and sort of some things that are happening there. In terms of just Australia and where you're at, Jindabyne or any of the other sort of places across Australia, while there may not be World Cups, are there sort of some type of events or sort of like training sort of things that you sort of do? Because as you said, you like to follow the cold, right? So, I'm sure you're going to be sticking around as much snow in Australia in winter as you can.
Yeah, definitely going to be skiing as much here as I can. There'll be I think there's the Thredbo series in Thredbo, which is a bunch of competitions like rail jam, slopestyle, big air kind of thing.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Good to hear. I still need to try one day and last longer than 30 seconds on skis and not completely wimp out. It is on my goal, my bucket list one day, Abby. So I don't think the big air is on my to-do list.
Maybe a smaller. Maybe
a smaller. I mean, look, the goal is still, and this is going to take a lot of mental willingness and becoming less of a chicken. The only sport Australia has never sent a Winter Olympic athlete to is ski jumping. So I'm just saying,
An eagle moment.
Exactly. Just as long as I get to the top and somehow get to the bottom.
Yeah. You only have to ski straight.
Exactly. Right. I don't know how I'll look in the tight spandex. I'll have to, do a bit more running and go to the gym a little bit more. But hey, I'm always down for a challenge, and I might be in my 50s by the time I reach it. But hey, I could set a record for oldest Olympic ski jumper as well. So
I reckon you've got it in the bag.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So thank you. We like to close out with a set of get to know you style questions. Now, as always, these are based on a questionnaire that Team Canada athletes got given to them ahead of the Pyeongchang Olympics and the Rio Olympics. And essentially, they ask them pretty random questions. And also, a lot of these questions will make me feel really old, given that some of these questions you're going to say certain things and I'm like, wow, I really am old. And I want to start off by saying, what was the first Olympic Games you remember watching?
I think it was the ones Russ Henshaw first competed in. Was it Sochi?
2014? Yeah. Yep, that definitely feel old. Considering my first Olympics I remember watching was about 10 years before you were born. So, You. This is the thing. Like this is your age. You have never been alive when Australia has hosted an Olympics.
Yeah.
Considering
I will be soon.
you
though.
will be soon. But like that just makes me feel
exciting.
old thinking that you weren't alive when Sydney happened. So
Yeah, I know.
I mean, Sydney, you're obviously not too far away from here. But like, if you've been to events at Homebush or places like that, and you sort of see where they were, and you kind of see they've got obviously the cauldron there at Homebush and things like that. Do you look at those things maybe a little bit differently now that you can say you've been to an Olympics?
Yeah, I think so. I've been to Homebush a couple times, not since the Olympics. So,
You have
but
to
it's
put it on the
definitely
list. You get free
yeah,
stuff now, Abby, I bet. You just be like, hey, see these like rings and stuff? Me.
yeah.
I got given them by the president of the IOC. That seriously has got to get you some. You could go to like Lucerne in Switzerland and like just be like, hey, this is probably like a secret key that gets you into the IOC headquarters, like into the bunker. You could help decide the 2030 Olympics with that pin. Where would you have them? Like, I mean, this is usually a question on these lists. I'm jumping ahead, but like, if you had the power with that pin to be like 2030, I want the Olympics in this place. I want the Winter Olympics to go to this city. Where would you put them?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Yes. It's been a while since I've been in Switzerland, so that works. Okay. Is that just favorite place to sort of compete, is it, or just favorite place to visit?
It's just one of my favorite places to ski. Like, it's insane wherever you go.
Great. I like it. As a kid, who was your favorite sports team?
Sports team? Probably the Matildas.
The Matildas. Good question. You got tickets to any of the World Cup games this year?
No, I was having a look at them recently, but I don't think I'll be able to get up there.
Damn. There's a lot going on, obviously, at the moment with that. Very, very exciting time for women's football and football in general. Your favourite music artists are?
Oh, I'm not actually a huge music person.
Right.
But we'll just say Beyonce.
Beyonce. She's always a good answer. So you don't sort of put on the headphones, you don't put on the Beats by Dre before you get on the top of a slope or something like that?
I've started to a bit more recently, but it's kind of just put something on. Don't really care what it is.
You're putting on Off the Podium. Listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, this is who they've got on this week. I love them. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
You might have already answered this question. Your favourite place to compete is?
Yeah, Switzerland.
Perfect. All right. One thing that you have always wanted to do is?
Maybe like bungee jump.
Bungee jump. There's that adrenaline. I can imagine you're on a freaking big air and half pipe and that sort of stuff. So you're doing crazy shit like that. That's great. Bungee jump. Again, show the pin, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Probably get you free bungee jumping. What is your favourite movie?
Favorite movie? Benchwarmers?
Transformers?
Benchwarmers.
Oh, Benchwarmers. Oh, well, that was two very different movies, Ben. I heard the bit at the end there. Benchwarmers, good movie.
Yeah.
I like that. Your favourite place? Well, this one they asked, because obviously it's a Canadian-based quiz, so they say your favourite place to visit in Canada is, but let's change it up. Your favourite place to visit in Australia is?
It'd have to be on the hill, Thredbo.
Beautiful. I like it. Do you have a favourite summer destination, or you don't give a shit about summer at all?
Went down to the coast recently, like down Merimbula, Pambula area.
Yep.
It's quite nice, close to home.
Marimbula's beautiful. Yeah. No, I've been that way before. Let's just ask a question. Have you been to Canada to compete much, or been there? Like, do you have a favourite place in Canada? We're a sort of a co-Australian Canadian show, so we'll ask that question anyway.
I went to Canada when I was about 6.
Right.
Went to some peaks, so probably some peaks.
Okay, that counts. Never been to Winnipeg at all, Abby? Or
No.
No, okay. Colin will be sad. That's all right. You're not missing much. Don't worry. This is the shortest one of these trivia ones I've ever done. They've literally got like 4 questions on it. I've chosen I've chosen Evan McCochran here, and he's letting me down here, Evan. So I'm just going to pull a random one out here. Let's go for ice hockey player Sarah Nurse, because she's a legend, and I'm sure she's got more in-depth questions. Do you have a favourite Olympic moment? So like this could be simply you competing. It could be watching your favorite athlete, compete in a different Olympics, summer or winter. Do you have a favorite Olympic moment?
Probably Tora Bright.
Tora, yes, Queen Tora. There you go. Love that. Have you met Tora?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah.
Good. All right. Yes.
Lovely.
I always get a nice happy feeling when I hear the name Tora Bright. Just an
Yeah.
absolute legend.
Yeah.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Um, Probably flying.
Flying.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that would
Get places quicker.
big air. You do all right with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think you might be able to do a few more tricks in the air.
Yeah.
Your most recent TV show that you binge watched?
Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, like everything, like all 58 seasons of it?
Yeah.
Now, I've got to ask this question because I'll be honest, not a big Grey's fan, but
Mm.
I applaud it for lasting this long. Like,
Yeah.
is
Crazy.
it like if I was to watch season 1 and then skip to whatever they're up to now, season 20 or whatever it is there much of a difference or are they still just like, we're still doing medical things?
Still doing medical things. There's a lot of that in the show. There's still a couple of the same people. But it's definitely looks a lot better. Like it's high quality and stuff.
The HD
But
makes a difference.
yeah, there's still a couple of same things kind of going on.
My age, again, showing Abby, I was a massive ER fan growing up.
Oh yeah.
So if you've never watched it, obviously it's a little bit older, but
Yeah.
you can go watch George Clooney in his prime before he was Hollywood's George Clooney.
Yeah.
So
Haven't watched it, but mum and dad have talked about it definitely.
great show. Fantastic show. Couldn't recommend it enough. Your least favorite foods are?
Ooh, mushrooms.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm an anti-mushroom guy as well.
Yeah.
Overrated.
They're just
Overrated.
slimy.
I know. And my dad, everything would have mushrooms in it. It wouldn't matter what he
Yeah.
cooked. I'm just going to add mushrooms into it and you will deal with it. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I will not eat those mushrooms. What is your favorite chip flavor?
Salt and vinegar all the way.
Oh, not even hesitated there. You're
Yeah.
into it. You were
Yeah.
waiting for that question. I like it. Good answer. All right. If you weren't an athlete, what would you be?
Oh, a ski bum.
just travel the world skiing?
Yeah.
Just do that? I like it. I like it. What's something that people usually describe you as?
Pretty quiet.
Pretty quiet?
Yeah.
Okay, I like it. I like here that Sarah's written sassy.
Sassy.
Sassy. There is always an optional drawing element, Abby. If you want to, and I will say only our winter athlete guests have ever done this before. None of us are winter athletes, always winning on this. But so if you want to, you can draw a picture of one of your teammates. You can draw a picture of yourself and draw a picture of your favorite animal. And Sarah's drawn I'm guessing that's a lion. So again, if you want to, feel free. You can flick it to me afterwards. This is a question that has been added to the roster since a very stupid question I asked one of our former guests. And I question whether you're going to be able to answer this because of your age, but do you have a favorite Meatloaf song, Abby? And please tell me you at least know who Meatloaf is.
I do know who
Thank
Meatloaf is.
God.
Don't think I have a favorite song.
All right. Well, we'll get you to listen to some and then we'll get you back on with your
I'll
gold
choose
medal.
one next time.
That could be your pump up song on the hill in
Yeah,
Milan. Bit of Bat
I'll
Out
be
of
listening
Hell.
to it while I'm competing.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. You know, Paradise, but just you're listening to these. Abby, a lot of fun having you on the show. If people want to follow your journey, sort of stay up to date with what you're up to between now and 2026, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, give us a plug. Where can people check you out?
Just the Instagram at Abi Harrigan.
Well, that's clever. Abby Harry Graham. I like that. No TikTok? Not on the...
No, not on the TikTok yet.
Yeah, I keep saying this every episode. Like, we're not either. And I guess, I don't know, if we just cave and be on the TikTok one day.
It might happen one day.
I really sound like one of those old guys. The TikTok. Get on the TikTok, guys. Abby, such a pleasure having you on the show to learn about your journey and your experiences. Best of luck moving forward with everything for Milan and beyond, for the Switzerland 2030 Olympics, of course. And we'll definitely get you back on to chat about how things are going for you again in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.